Like anybody that creates anything that wants to do it for a living, you never think you're good enough to do it. And then at 26, I decided, okay, next week I'm opening my tattoo shop and that's it. I have no more income. And I had a $10,000 loan. I had no money in my account. I was broke.
So that was a little segment of a documentary that I shot called Be the Other, and I posted it on my channel last week, so if you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out. And this was a really interesting project because it had been a while since I made a project or a video all by myself. And so I thought it'd be an interesting video to go over my process in approaching a documentary project, but as a solo filmmaker. So basically I divided this kind of breakdown into 3 parts, which is usually how you would approach most video or film projects. The first part is pre-production. Now, when it comes to pre-production, I think it's absolutely essential to meet your subject, and your subject will be your story. It will be the whole essence of the film. So flashback to about a month ago now. When I posted my first series of videos, this guy, Jonathan Bourassa, commented on one of my videos and saw kind of the content that he was doing. I reached out to him on one of his videos, commented, and was like, hey, look, really like what you're doing. I think we should meet up, grab a coffee, and just chat. But basically, you want to meet up with your subject, ask a few questions, get to know them better, and that will really simplify the type of questions that you're able to come up with, because the questions is really what's going to guide your entire story through the whole film. So it's important to be able to like kind of know what you want to get out of it, and also be willing to adapt to what is given to you and how you can kind of transform that. Now, I approach each project very differently, and this kind of depends on the story that you want to tell. I like to write out a like traditional script, so I'll usually write 3 different scenes that I can have him do, and then I'm able to use that in a more coherent series of B-roll. I wanted to set up a scene of him kind of drawing and doing a stencil, and then mainly the preparation that he does before he has a client, so the preparation of the needle, his instruments, his tools, the colors, all that kind of stuff. So just little micro scenes, but then it allows me to kind of break it down into a series of shots that I really need. I then bring everything into Milanote, which is a really wonderful tool which you can use to properly organize your entire film project. So everything that goes from the questions to the mood board to reference videos that I have to the reference images. So I like keeping everything into one app, and then I'm able to share that app with any crew that I might have on that day. So now we were entering production. This was our first day of shooting. I wanted to keep everything as small as I could, so I shot on my Sony a7S III, and I had shotgun mic. I did end up shooting on prime lenses. And again, as far as audio, use the Rode wireless Go 2, but I think moving forward for any documentary that I do next, I am definitely going to use my Zoom H6 and a shotgun mic and kind of get a more quality audio setup. And especially when you're doing a sit-down interview, it's nice to get that kind of high quality audio. So I would really recommend that you go with the Zoom H6 and then a boom mic or a shotgun mic, and use the lavs as like a backup. The moment where you don't have that backup and you need it, it really sucks. So just make sure you have a backup on your audio. We learn and we make mistakes, so I made a mistake, so you guys don't have to make a mistake. So what I do on day 1 is I always start with a little bit of B-roll. I get the person used to the camera. You know, we start shooting like little moments, maybe things that we'll use, maybe things that we don't, but it's just to see how comfortable they are in front of a camera. And in this case, Jonathan does YouTube, so he's a little bit used to being in front of a camera. So I wanted to make sure that on day 1, we kind of got that out of the way and that he got comfortable with it. So we started with a little bit of B-roll, some shots of him talking to his client and stuff, and then we got right into the interview. And so when we get into the interview, I usually kind of stagger my questions in like a very specific way. I like to have very simple and introduction questions just to kind of get them a little bit more comfortable. And then once they're comfortable, then I start asking a little bit more in-depth questions and seeing how they're reacting. And I would say about the halfway mark, I try to ask all the really good questions, because that's really when that person is kind of warmed up and is feeling comfortable talking to you and answering those questions. So that's usually kind of the gold, is like really the kind of middle and then maybe the end. One thing I want to talk about is kind of like the lighting setup that I had for the interview. I think I made a mistake on the day. I came in and I really wanted a book light. I really wanted a very specific, soft kind of lighting setup. And I wanted to shoot on the broad side of the face. So I was kind of like with my key light. And the intention behind it was for it to be more of a lit scene, because everything that followed after it was so dark and so moody that I didn't want to shoot on the shadow side. I really wanted to kind of show his struggles of his past, but to make sure that him in the interview was more out of this darkness. He was out of this struggle. And that's kind of why I chose to shoot on the broadside for the interview. But looking at it, it's definitely less interesting. There's not as interesting shadows on the face. So I don't know. I think for the next project, I would probably change it and shoot on shadow side. I had a series of rules that I wanted to go with for this project, and I just wanted to stick to them. And I had an intention behind it. I think having the majority of the interview on broadside was kind of an interesting stylistic choice, but maybe not the best one. So I'm kind of curious what you guys thought about the interview scene and just the intention behind it, and if you even thought about it at all or not. As a future thing, I think I would probably shoot on the shadow side for an interview setup, just to make it more visually dynamic and a little bit more dark and a little bit more moody. So if you're kind of questioning shooting on broadside because you want the character to be in the light, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. You let me know. So because this isn't really a video specifically about editing, I think editing is the biggest part in all of documentary filmmaking, because it's really where your story comes alive. So it's important to make sure that your story is kind of clear and coherent and makes a lot of sense. And in this case, like the first video that I did was mainly like a cinematic highlight, and we really focused on his tattooing. So I didn't talk about his art because the format was so much shorter. I had to really keep it specific to tattooing, because if once he started to talk about painting and everything, it got very distracting and it was hard to make a coherent story with him. So when it comes to sound design, I like having a mix of diegetic sound, which is basically all the sounds that you would kind of see on screen. So in this case, when he's writing, I have a sound effect of, just someone scribbling and someone writing. But I also like to kind of augment everything a little bit. And especially when I have whip pans or movements or stuff like that, I like adding little whip pans to kind of help sell the cut a little bit more, so it adds motion. Using sound design is a great way to really help your editing and help your transitions and your cuts and everything. So this is kind of usually what my sound timeline will look like. And for sound design, I use Artlist. I use Artlist for sound design, for music, for pretty much everything when it comes to audio. They even have stock footage too, so if you're missing a few shots and you need to kind of throw them in there, it's a wonderful platform that has helped me immensely as a filmmaker and now YouTuber, and it's a really amazing website. I highly recommend it. And so if you're into that kind of stuff, the link below will give you 2 months for free. So if you sign up for a 1-year subscription, you get 2 months free by using my code, And so then the last aspect of it was color correction. So I can make another video on that, on how I color corrected this video if you like the vibe, but I really wanted to go for something more nostalgic, something kind of film. So I had a lot of grain, I had a lot of like mattes and kind of vignettes and that style. And I wanted to really get into that vintage vibe, and it was kind of inspired by the lighting and everything. So I kind of took a lot of the inspirations that I had from the mood board and all that and really like brought it home up until the end and kind of kept it that way. For a little project that I I don't know, I doubted myself. I didn't know if I could do it or if it would work out and how it would kind of turn out. And I think like any moment where you're questioning yourself on if it's a good story or it's a bad story, I think you should just do it. I think you should just gain the confidence, gain the momentum, and go out and actually shoot it. And it doesn't have to be this crazy documentary where you travel across the world. It can be a documentary about your parents, about your friends, you know. If you know anyone that does cool things, they design t-shirts, they design shoes, whatever, like they can do pottery. I think anything that is a visual kind of hobby can be super interesting to tell the story. And yeah, that's it. So, you know, the cinematic video came out last week. I hope you guys liked that if you haven't seen it already. And I really hope that you guys found this video interesting. I really appreciate you guys for sticking around up until the end. So if you like filmmakers and you want to learn more about, you know, what we do behind the scenes and what we do on set and like the projects that we shoot, subscribe, leave a comment on this video if you liked it, and please like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.